Hank, could you just give me a little background on who you are?
Yeah, so, I'm just a guy that's, I've done a lot of things behind the scenes, where I've done stuff for the defense contractors. I did a lot of patents. But ever since I was young, I've seen the corruption in our government and the deception that's going on. Did I realize how deep the rabbit hole went or how bad it was worldwide? I guess you don't look at in those terms. But what sent me down this path is God told me Trump was the Lord's anointed. This is before Trump was elected. And I went through a divorce. I went through a few things that were difficult, things that I would hold very dear to me. And then from that, I decided I would start telling people what was going on. There was a plan and operation, and Q was a military operation to expose the truth and get everyone to start thinking. So I painted my whole building to show everyone the plan. And in the process of this, I didn't realize that I would be going to January 6th and be arrested. And I just thought of myself as a digital soldier behind the scenes, just telling people what the truth was the best I knew it, and didn't realize I'd be on the front line. And now I'm in this epic battle, which I consider nothing but a blessing. I mean, a lot of people going through the circumstances like this, and a lot of January 6 are very upset about what they went through and the way they've been treated. And I've been actually treated fairly well in most circumstances, at least as far as the police goes. I didn't have my house raided like a lot of the, people did with the three-letter agencies, kicking their doors in. I was, the feds wanted to arrest me, is what I heard, but they wouldn't do it, so they asked the local police to do it. The mayor, Clacken, said, no, do not arrest Mr. Munzter, let the feds handle it. So then they talked the police into arresting me anyways, which is nice that they did, because if they come up to my house, kick my doors in, it's a possibility some of those people may not have come out alive. Now, here's the deal, and I don't care if someone knocks on my door, they want me to come in, that's not a big deal. But when you start breaking doors down and hurting people, that's not a good deal. And I'm happy to self-surrender, which is what I did. And so the feds treat me real well. So I was arrested by the police, I was held in Dillon for about an hour, then they took me up to meet with the feds, with the federal agents. They were very nice. And then I showed them what happened, the videos of my phone and all that. Then they want to seize my phone. I said, you can't have it. I said, you can have anything 3 days before and 3 days after, but I will get my phone back, and I did. And so then, I was released, and I was arrested on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which was January 20th. I was in jail for 4 days because they don't consider that day a holiday. And then I really didn't think through this whole process that I'd ever get arrested. I had too much information. I mean, theoretically, if they would let me put the discovery that I was necessary, I could have put Trump back in the White House, and we could overturn the 2020 election and show this whole thing as being a fraud. But there was no discovery. Multiple Brady law violations in my case, which they did with every January 6er. The only benefit I had is I went to the Capitol for my trial a week early, and I saw what was happening, so I knew it was a dog and pony show. And so I called the judge out, I called out the prosecutors and all that. I said, this isn't a trial about me, it's about you. And the day I go to jail, I said, I can have you before a war tribunal, and if it raises to the level of treason, I can have you executed by hanging or firing squad if it raises to the level of treason under Trump's PADs. And people understand what that is a little bit later, but at some point there needs to be justice. Now, as the question comes down to what do they know and when do they know it? That doesn't mean my judge has committed those type of crimes, it just means it's a possibility. If they knew they were doing this and it was intentional, absolutely, there needs to be accountability. Now, we can also show grace to people once we hold them accountable, but at some point, until true justice is measured out, we're never going to have a society that's going to work. We're going to have a country that's going to end up in civil war. We're going to have major problems. This is not going to happen. I tell the patriots, as mad as they are, they want to stop this from continuing. Hold the line. I mean, don't do anything violent, because this is not what we're about. We're about spreading the truth, and so people wake up, because I really believe the military is the only way. They'll handle things, and they know who the people are that have perpetrated these crimes. If we go in there and we try to fix things, we can hurt innocent people. We can't have a civil war. So I want everyone to keep their cool at this point and recognize, there's a process we have to go through, and to hold them accountable. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm speaking out. That's why I've been very vocal. And like I say, if we'd truly had our day in court, and every January 6er would have fought, we would be in a different situation right now. Matter of fact, 2 years into this, I believe if we wouldn't have plea bargained and play the games, we could have bottlenecked the justice system. We could have brought the stuff forward. We could have had the appeals go to the Supreme Court, which we did with one of them, 1512, which they're going to try to lock me up for 20 years. And so I just want people to understand what our justice system has done. The 1512 was set up to be a a policy that they created because of Enron. Enron was creating paperwork to prevent them from doing their investigation as to the fraud that occurred. So they tried to say we interrupted Congress, which is not how that law reads. So when it got appealed to the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court said, we're not overturning the law, we're just telling the judicial system you can't use the law in the way you're using it unless they were actually involved in paperwork hindering an investigation. You can't use it because it has to be done as it was written. And so it was overturned. Same thing happened with the Chevron case, with the three other agencies using it to stop the fisheries and everything else. It's called interpretation of the law. It was never written to be that way, but that's how they used it. And so they went after people. Because they've overturned the 1512 and the Chevron case, most of the laws that we have on the books right now can actually be appealed because they're truly unconstitutional and they don't fit the bill for how they were written by Congress in the first place. So what we're seeing right now is a weaponization of the judicial system, which means there's people behind bars. When I was in jail, and I'm a big advocate because there's a lot of people behind bars that shouldn't be behind bars, or for the crimes that they committed were minor crimes for having drugs. A lot of people, when they're having drugs or whatever, they have to support their habits, they end up selling it. It's not like they're big kingpins or anything like that. They may have a little bit of drugs on them, but then they get all these charges for conspiracy and everything else, just like they did with January 6th to trump up the charges. And this is why our prisons are full. And then we're not in there helping the people. They're in there for drug and they have an addiction. And then all of a sudden they put them on Suboxone and stuff like that in the prison system, and they're still on drugs. So our government is giving them drugs. They're not helping these people, not rehabilitating these people to go out into society and be a productive part of it. And anyone who goes to jail, and you can talk to any January 6er, they want to bring down the system. When you come out of prison and you see the way the guards treat you and the way you're treated, I mean, you're just like animals. They don't care. And I was told when I went in there, you know, some of the guards are nice, some of them are horrible, and the horrible ones are horrible. And so there's no way to fix the system that's corrupt. And we got people in prison they're aliens. That's why Trump's going to, you know, empty these prisons out and send them back to their countries. There's too much money being spent in the prison system. It's not going back to the prisoners. It's not helping them to rehabilitate and bring them back into society, and it's costing the taxpayers a pile of money. So we're going about it the wrong way. And it just allows me, because I'm an innocent man, to bring this up. I think most people, because they think our judicial system is the holy of holies, that if you've been convicted or you're charged, you must be guilty. And people, you know, friends, family, they'll turn on you immediately. And then when you're locked up, then they think they can take advantage of you. And I see this over and over in January 6ers situation. Like Trump said, until you lose everything, he said, you don't know who your friends are. He helped people become millionaires and billionaires. And when he needed help, when he lost his company and he had the plane crash with his people that died, he didn't know how to run his businesses, you know? I mean, he knew real estate, but he didn't know what went on in the real estate and the businesses he was conducting, so he had to learn it. And so he did that, but he said the people that he helped abandoned him. And we've seen the same thing. And anyone who's been in prison or been convicted or anything, same thing happens. It's not that you made a mistake, and it's not that you're going to get through it and you're going to be a productive part of society later. It's just, we just seem to think that you're a criminal because you have a record or you have a past or something that happened. But here's the problem. Every American commits a felony every week and they don't know it. That is disconcerting. There's a lot of people that shouldn't be behind bars that are behind bars, and there's people that have gotten in trouble for things that shouldn't be for the length of time they're in there. And so we need to fix the system, and my story just helps that situation. But another disconcerting thing that just happened to me, so I get out of jail, I have a presidential pardon, all my rights are restored, supposedly. So I go down to the sheriff's department and ask to see my record because I want to make sure, because here's a January 6er just a few days ago that got killed by a police officer. We don't know what the circumstances are. I don't know what the story is at this point, whether something entailed, but think of it this way. What if you're a police officer, you pull someone over? And in my case, I got pulled over when I was in Idaho because I was January 6er, they ran my plates, and all of a sudden 20 people show up there, you know, like I'm a real hardened criminal. Now, I basically instruct them that I'm a January 6er, I've been arrested, here's the reason why, so that they don't get on guard. All of a sudden it pops up, I'm a terrorist, you know. And so they have me as a tier 1, you know, that's the highest level. And so when I go in the airport, I have 4 S's. I mean, it takes me 4 hours to get on an airplane. There's security checkpoint at every airplane I get on, even though I'm in the terminal. I mean, it's just the way we're treated. And so here we have a situation where I can't look at my records. No one else can look at the records. And I called the sheriff, I called the police department, You know, no one can look at it because it's against the law. I called the FBI, they can't look at it. I even called Secret Service because I was investigated by Secret Service, and they can't look at it. So the only thing I can do now is go to my congressman to find out what's on it. Because here's the situation. What if an officer pulls me over, and I don't know how it's designated in their system, say I'm a domestic terrorist, they have me listed, but it says, you know, it's been expunged or whatever, but it's in fine print. What is the officer going to see when it pops up? What does your record look like? What is the officer seeing? These kind of things need to be fixed because I was wrongfully charged, but then does that ever really go away? And those are disconcerting issues, and there's some of the things that I've run into in this whole process.
That was a very comprehensive look, and I'm just going to turn back the clock and just go to a little bit more detail. Can you tell me about the initial experience on January 6th? I mean, what was it like for you?
Well, for me, so this is really interesting because the whole playbook of what happened that day was actually set up by the feds. So it's basically what happened to me is, it's like you invited me over to your house, and I come into your house, and then when I'm in your house, you assault me, and then you call the police, and you tell me I broke and entered. That's exactly what happened in my case. Was there violence in the Capitol that happened outside? Yes, but I didn't know about that. I didn't see any of that when I was there. But I did find out about that later, because when I was in DC, I really had my eyes open up to what really occurred that day, because I didn't see that. What I know is when I approached the Capitol, because Trump told us to go there, goes peacefully and patriotically, which is what we did, and I couldn't even see the grass around the Capitol. I mean, there was that many people, it was all the way out in the street. So we started working our way towards the staircasing. One is the inaugural stage, and one is the staircasing going up to the Capitol. And some women had come down off the staircasing, and there was 9 of us. And so I was the guy that put an ad in the paper to pay for as many people that wanted to go to DC that could go. And so I got 9 people there. Then they called me the ringleader that got 2 million people there. Well, I only got 9 people. The rest is up to Trump. But that would be an honor if I could get 2 million. But anyhow, so we're working our way up to the inaugural stage, and these 2 women said the Capitol Police were pepper spraying and tear gassing people. And I could hear the booms in the background, so much noise I couldn't identify what it was. I couldn't even really tell they were a boom. They were just a noise I could hear. So we decided where we're going to find out what's going on. So we head towards the staircase. Couldn't get up to the left, so we went up to the right, and that's where we broke up with the group. And I guess me and one of the other guys entered the building. I didn't know he entered till we got home that night because I didn't see him because we got broken up. So I go around the corner, and here's all these guys with helmet and goggles pushing against the police. And so here I turn this corner, here they are, and they're shooting pepper spray in my direction. So I back up, get underneath the scaffolding that's there, and I'm just like trying to figure out what's happening here. I mean, this is the greatest time to be alive, but yet I can't figure out what's happening. I mean, nothing makes any sense, you know. Here we are standing there, and all this is going on. So I'm thinking, well, I need to see what's happening. So I look above me, and there's 500 people on the scaffolding. I thought I was going to collapse on my head. So I thought, this isn't a safe place to be. So I jumped over the footwall. It takes you up on top of the bleachers. So I get up on top of the bleachers there, and then people are saying we stormed the Capitol. So I get on my phone because my phone's going dead, and so I can only turn it on a couple times. So I turn it on. I said, we just stormed the Capitol. May have threw tear gas and pepper spray. Oh man, I hit the media. I was on HBO. I was on everything because I made that, and I posted on my Facebook page. But it was great. But just because you say you stormed the Capitol, does you do that? I mean, I could storm into your office. I can storm into whatever, but you know, the way the prosecution looks at it, it's like you're a terrible person. And then the other thing they used in my prosecution is I said, you know, that because I wanted to go to DC and I wanted to get everyone else there, I felt like David versus Goliath. I felt like God laid that on my heart. So I posted on Facebook. And they literally used that in your court proceeding, that you were going to do something because you said you're like David versus Goliath. And I always said, you know, nobody is scared of one bee, but if a million bees show up, you know, even the bravest run. So that's how they tried to convict me off those 2 things. Try to say, you know, I'm trying to do something wrong. But anyhow, so here I am. I just got done saying that, and the tear gas is blowing up the inaugural stage. So I go up to the upper part of the stage, and I'm standing there. And then next thing you know, they open the doors to the Capitol, and they waved us in. I'm going, oh, they're letting us in the Capitol. And there's reporters up on the top there with me as well. It's not like I'm in a restricted area or know there's a restricted area because there's nothing restricted. I didn't break through any police lines or anything of that nature. So then I go down the staircasing, get in line. There's a whole bunch of people in a nice, neat line going in. So we walk in with them. We said, our house, you know, and there's women. There's actually kids, younger adults in there as well. We weren't the only ones. We had a 10-year-old kid with us. And so we went into the Capitol there. So went in the first rotunda, and then we kind of go to the left. It kind of goes through where it looks like a round staircase and goes around that and kind of goes in a square room. And then all of a sudden we run into these guards that were there. And there was people even behind the guards that were passing through the guards, and we were standing there going, our house, and next thing you know, the Capitol Police just opened up and pepper sprayed for no reason. We were just standing there. They didn't ask us to leave, they never told us, and under DC law, it's a requirement that they tell everyone from the front of the crowd to the back of the crowd 3 times before they're allowed to use any kind of deadly force of any sort. That's law. But they violated their own law and they started pepper spraying us. So I tilted my head down, you know, because they're spraying in my face. And that's one of the things they use in my court proceeding. They said because my head was tilted down and I was pushing against the guards. Not once did they show me I was pushing against the guards, but that's how they inferred it because, you know, I had a ball cap on. I was trying to protect my eyes, but they were just a whole can of spray just going right at us, you know. So, you know, I backed up from there, went to the main rotunda room, and at that point they had all the doors blocked off. So I go over to where I came in, there's a line of guards, and I tried to get out that way because that's the way I came in. You know, this is the doorway behind the inaugural stage facing the Washington Monument. And so there was no exit out of the building. So then the guards started pushing us like in a mosh pit. They were literally all the way around us, 360, pushing us, just smashing us. And there's women falling down, I'm picking them up, and they just kept pushing and pushing. And then I had this big, tall, black guy. And this was one of the things that wasn't discovered in my discovery because they wouldn't provide it. But there's a big, tall, black guy and a short lady, and they had shields, and he kept hitting me with his baton. And I have no place to go. I'm saying, you got to stop hitting me. You know, I have no place to go. And I said, do it one more time. I said, I'm going to throw you through that wall. So he quit hitting me, and I apologized to the lady next to him, and she smiled, and he didn't hit me anymore. And I said, now you got to get someone to get this door open up, because we finally figured out the way they're trying to push us out. You got to get this door open up, because we can't get out of there. So anyhow, they sent a guard over, or I think it was a police officer, because he had the blue and the white on. So that was, I don't think that was Capitol Police. I think the Capitol Police were black, so these would be regular police officers that showed up. So he went over to get the door opened up. And when they got the door opened up, then we started exiting the building. And in the process of exiting the building, one of the things in my discovery is they said that I tried to grab a baton from an officer. I'm like, I didn't grab a baton. I didn't even know what they were talking about. So in the discovery, I found out, and I remember getting hit over the head, but I didn't know by what, because there's some flags in front of my face. Come to find out, an officer clubbed me over the head. So they didn't want that known. And they tried to keep all this information for my court case and all the stuff in the Capitol secret. You could see it with your attorney. You weren't allowed to tell anyone. So I went through 6 judges and 3 attorneys. One of the last attorneys I had never had any discovery. And here he was trying to get a course, trying to get me in a stipulated bench trial, which makes me plead guilty to not everything. And I'm not going to plead guilty to anything because I didn't do anything wrong. Why would I plead guilty to any of these type of things? So basically, I had him basically in a malpractice situation. So I called him out on everything. He dumped all the files. Well, because he dumped all the files, you know, that information of me being assaulted was released to the public. I had someone else do a video up because at that point I had no control over the email that went out because he sent it all back and everyone had it. It wasn't just me. And so he put together a video, and then the judge was pretty upset that I showed it, but here I am being assaulted over the head. So here we have a situation where I'm not allowed to bring witnesses in. They're not supposed to bring witnesses in either unless they're directly involved in my situation, yet they had a police officer there. I don't know if he was Capitol Police or what, but he was testifying about it, but he wasn't involved in my case. So even on the judge's own guidelines, they violated their own. So he was testifying that blah, blah, blah stuff, you know, that went on the Capitol had nothing to do with me, kind of the same narrative, you know, that they do with all J6ers. And then we asked him, I said, is there any time that officers should ever strike a person? They said, never. And any time above the waist, he said, absolutely never. And then we showed the video of me being struck over the head, but they didn't even consider that. The judge didn't even look at that as even being a relevant situation. But there's huge liabilities going on that the police conducted, and they were guilty of some very serious crimes. Now, to get back to why this is important, knowing the situation, so when I left there that day, I went back to our apartment. At that point, we didn't know what happened. One of the other guys that was in there, and he only got like a month and a half in jail, he plea bargained. And they didn't throw felonies after him, but he was in there just like I was. So anyone who fought it ended up getting the felonies thrown against them. You see what I'm saying? Try to force everyone to a plea bargain. But I'm not one to be intimidated. But he had a video, a cam that was above his head that shows the whole footage that day. And I wish we could get it, and hopefully maybe at some point that'll happen, because that'll show a lot of discovery that they withheld. But I think at some point we're going to get everything from the Capitol as well, because at some point Trump is going to force that issue, and there'll be, And there'll be a documentary made of everything that happened that, so everyone can see what I did that day and what actually occurred. So it's just not my story. You can actually physically see it. But yeah, we get back to our apartment. Then all of a sudden, we see on TV, it looks like the Capitol's on fire. People are getting beat up. I mean, it looked horrible. Like, what the heck happened? So we couldn't get on our plane that night because there was curfew. So the next morning, I go over there to the Capitol to see what's going on. And the National Guard was there first thing in the morning. They're putting up some fencing. It wasn't taped off, nothing. You would think this was a crime scene. 3 people died and blah, 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 and all that stuff. That didn't happen at all. I didn't see that. And we couldn't figure out what was going on. So probably 2 years down the road, or maybe 2.5, 3, I went to DC, and that's when I met a guy by the name of Tommy Tatum, and then I understood the rest of the story, and I got the video footage for it. The reason why that tunnel got violent is there was a lady by the name of Bolin. She was beaten to death by a lady officer. She was laying on the ground, and they kept bludgeoning her with a baton until she died. And they tried to do CPR and everything else, and they said it was because of some other thing, because they didn't want to admit fault. The people that saw that got really mad, and one of the guys even went after him with a baseball bat. And I'm telling you, if I was there and I see an officer kill someone, because I told this on the stand, I said, I'm the type of guy, I see 20 people beating someone up, I'll jump in the alley and rescue that person. I see an officer getting beat up, I'll jump in there and help the officer. But I see the officer beating the heck out of someone, I said, I'll take him out too. If I was one of those people down there and saw that happen, not only would I got after the police, but I see them shooting the bullets into people's faces and stuff, rubber bullets, and these people weren't even on the front line. They weren't doing nothing. They're in the crowd doing absolutely nothing. They shot tear gas at them, you know, and hurt people. I would have been up there taking those officers out. Now, no officers died that day, but 3 January 6ers died. But if I was there very well could have been a death if I would have known that those people were doing that intentionally. That's what really should make people mad, because they don't have the right to do that. I don't care if you have a badge or a gun or not. Respect is mutual. And they need to follow the law. They're not above the law. And that's what we have. And we're dealing with the same thing we're dealing with Great Britain. 1776, it's all over my building. Laws for thee, but not for me. We need to have equal justice under the law, or this America, the American experiment will fail. And the only thing that makes us great, because we're not the best in the world because of education, we're not the best because, you know, all the metrics we'd measure a nation by. We're the best in the world because we stand against tyranny and we always defeat it. That's what makes America great, and that's what liberates the world, and the world looks to us.
You know, and you touched on a little bit, again, just trying to do this sequentially. Tell me about the legal battle. So you know, the legal battle afterwards, I mean, how was that experience for you?
So basically, we had no discovery going in. I saw all the Brady Law violations. So basically, when I got on the stand, I was basically instructing the judge that this wasn't a trial about me, it's about you. And that's kind of how the whole trial went. I mean, basically, I got up there and gave my testimony of their criminal activity against me. Because I didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to talk about in my case. They let me in, they assaulted me, and here I am.
And as we were talking about earlier, you know, you were not expecting, you know, jail time, prison time. What was that like when you were sentenced?
Well, some of the guards were horrible. But I was supposed to be in a low security prison. I was in Lompoc. But they treat it like a USP, so it's run like a high security prison. So basically the people that went from Alcatraz went there. So to give you an idea, and the doors lock, you know, and then they do head counts every couple hours. Even at night they come by and check on you. So it's a really, and just because we should be in a low security, there's 2 ways to look at it. You can have a low security prison and have more violence and more problems than you can in a facility that's considered low security and they treat it like a high. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to say good or bad in one way or another, but if it's labeled as a low security prison, it should at least be treated like a low security prison. Second of all, the guards need a lot of training. So the guards would say, well, it's in the handbook, or whatever. So I'd walk in from being out in the yard and my coat was buttoned up, then I get in trouble for having my coat buttoned up. And then if you walk in, you had a hat on, then I take the hat from you. But there's no laws. Nobody tells you can or cannot do these things. So when I finally left the prison, I read the handbook and none of that's in there. But then the guards would come to me and they'd ask, one of the guys was asked this question. He goes, what car do you drive? And he goes, well, I drive blah, blah, blah. And then they threw him in the shoe because he thought he was being a smart aleck. He didn't know, he's never been in prison. They want to know what group you run with. And so I'm like, and I knew this happened to this other guy, so I asked the guard, I said, what does that mean? I mean, I'm not into racial things. I mean, I get along with everyone there. But that's how they segregate. And I guess the reason why they do it in prison is so that there isn't a race war. So people aren't taking loans from this group or that group. They kind of keep it in their own little sections. But then they also form it as if you're some kind of racial based or something. I don't know how that works. It's just the way prison life seems to be. And rather than cohabitating together, but I was never, I mean, I was in a cell with a gentleman who was Native American, you know, and normally they don't put two different people together, you know, usually it's of the same race. That's how they do it to prevent problems, but I got along with everyone there. All the Mexicans that were there, some were legal, some were illegal, you know. There wasn't a lot of colored people there was a few, but I didn't have any problems with anyone. I just talked to everyone and just told them my story, and you know, and the only thing I can do is just share what I went through, because we want to fix these prisons. We want to make them right. And the other thing is we got to make sure that innocent people aren't put behind bars. And our founding fathers made it very clear that, you know, I'd rather have a guilty man go free than an innocent man go to jail. So everything that our government pretty much does at this point isn't based upon proof. It's all based upon hearsay and people's testimony to convict people, not the actual facts. And that's really sad. And you've seen that weaponization against Trump. People accuse him of all kinds of things, you know. None of it sticks, but you know, but the battle he has to go through. And he's got the finest attorneys in the world to help protect him. What does an average person like you and me able to do in a situation like when you got a court-appointed attorney? You can't even hire a high-powered attorney and defend yourself. You're pretty much, you know, going to get crucified in the system.
Yeah, you know, and there was a question that came to my mind just as, you know, an outsider. When you're in prison, was there ever any time where you were like almost regretted it, or?
No, I was empowered by it. I'm kind of a different breed, you know. I mean, this whole thing I've been through, I consider bad honor. God put you through these things, and you know, I look at life as everything that I go through is a blessing from God. I feel like a Job experience. You know, Job went through this, went through that, and God blessed him. You know, all I can do is stand on my principles. And God is the one who deals with the outcomes, not me. And so if we live by those principles alone, I think we solve a lot of our problems, you know. But everyone is trying to figure out, they're positioning themselves for the best outcome. And so then they fall prey to the system. Well, if I do this and I do this, I'll have a better outcome. So therefore, even if I steer the truth this way or steer the truth that way, you know, to my own benefit, which isn't fully truthful but not wrong either, you know what I'm saying? In such a way that you can have a better outcome, people do that. I was very honest with the judge. I told him what I thought. I didn't care. I said, yeah, you know, and they asked me what I was there that day, and I said I was there, you know, to prevent Congress from stealing the election. Well, that gives me the 20-year conviction because now I'm interrupting Congress. Did I go there for that reason? No. But when Trump told us to go over there, we went over there, and then we realized what they did, and then that's when I realized that was my purpose for being there. Did I have foreknowledge when I went there that I was going to interrupt something or even try to interrupt something? No, I didn't even know the vote count was going on. And then they try to say because I knew that we had very few electoral votes in Montana, because I mentioned that in one of my posts, I said Montana doesn't matter in the election scheme of things because we have so few people. That means I know that there's an electoral count. I didn't even know how the system works. I mean, none of us, I mean, we just know that they vote and decide, and that's how it works. You know, I don't think anyone really pays attention to time or dates or anything. I had no idea that that was even going on that day at that time until later. But then they use the later stuff because now you understand it to convict you on it. It's what you knew and when you knew it. It's not after the fact. But that's kind of how our legal system plays it out. Once they make you aware of something, you talk about it, now they say, did you know? But did you know before they told you? No. So, and that's disconcerting for anyone.
Now tell me about, so you were, and please correct me if I'm wrong, so you were sentenced for 24 months and then 12 on parole, is that correct?
I think that's what the charge was, okay. Yeah. They were trying to get more than that but the 15-12 got thrown out. Yeah. So otherwise it'd be more time. And the judge put on the lower end of sentencing based upon those charges. But I got I think it's 6 misdemeanors. But I mean, it's like picketing and all. I didn't picket or anything. I mean, these are constitutionally protected rights, but they're charging us for it. So everything they're doing is illegal. Eventually those things can be challenged by the Supreme Court. But I believe at this point, I knew it was going to be a moot issue to even challenge those things. It'd take too long to get to the Supreme Court. I knew I'd have a presidential pardon. I really didn't think they would actually arrest me, but when the judge finally ordered me to go to jail, and then we had an extension done because I had to shut down my business, which I had done many times, because every time they said I was going to go to jail, it never happened. I just figured at this point, it's not just going to happen, you know. They're going to keep putting it off because, you know, we're going to hold them accountable. But I spent 17 days in jail, which is Q, which is what I've been telling everyone. So I don't know if that's just God providence or an accident or part of a plan. I can't tell you. I just know that I'm just a person. I would say, you know, I feel like we're watching a movie, and I'm just a character in the movie right now.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's a great segue into my next question. So, you know, you think you're going to be there for, you know, 2 years, you know, which isn't a super long time, but longer than I've ever been in prison. So tell me about your response when you hear about the pardons. I mean, how do you react to that?
Well, you know, I was more excited for everyone else than I was myself, you know, because, you know, this is, well, so you got to understand, for me, it was much harder to be on the outside than it was in jail. For me, being in jail was a vacation. You know what I do. I mean, I work 2 or 3 days straight, no sleep, work, you know, 4 hours and do it again. I'm just a hard worker. And I have to man the phone. So when I get there, I don't have to do anything. You know how little pressure there is? I mean, this sounds really weird to some people, but it was relaxing for me. And I got along with everyone. Like I say, other than the few nasty guards, it was just fine for me. The food was terrible. They improved the food after a period of time. I think it's because less people are stealing the food out of the back, because they were. That's a whole other story, but that's fine.
Well, we've got time, but yeah, no pressure to tell. Yeah. So yeah, as you were saying. So.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, and there's so much more they can do in the prisons. They could put a lot more people to work. I mean, I saw a lot of the Mexicans that were there were cleaning the yard and maintaining the yards. They did a great job. But I believe, you know, these people are bored that are in jail. I think you put them to work, building things, doing things. I mean, I think the biggest concern they have is people bringing tools out or creating shanks or some weird thing. But I didn't see any violence. I don't see anyone try to create violence. Matter of fact, you're making a more peaceful environment, you're going to have a lot less of that anyways. So I don't know. It's just our prison system is not where it should be. It's not to rehabilitate people. It's to humiliate them when they get out. They just want to get even with the system. So that's why they have career criminals. I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, if this doesn't change in our country, and I had to spend 2 years in there, when I get out of there, it's like, know what? We're going to take down the entire system. We are going to break America as it is and restore it. We have the right to abolish it. That's what the Constitution says. And we'll do whatever means is necessary, or if we have to bear arms to do it. I don't believe that's that way we should do it. We need to do it at the ballot box first. We need to stand up. We need to be outspoken. If you're not outspoken, you don't have the right to make a stand. Yeah. You got to do that first. Yeah. And then we defeat tyranny in that order.
And something else I want to touch on is on your Facebook, you posted a video before you went into prison, I think in the...
Well, I wore that into prison.
Oh, okay.
This is a whole nother story. So I wore striped pants. I wore my Rock in the Orange shirt, stay seized. And that says when tyranny becomes law, rebellions do it. So it's actually my actual mugshot. Mm-hmm. And so I walked in and all the guards were just laughing to me. So they took my clothes. So I told, hang on, I'll be out here in 17 days. And I don't think they believe me. So I go to get my clothes back. I don't have any clothes. So here I'm as free as a jaybird, and here I am going to leave the prison, you know. I'll be jaywalking, they'll throw me back in jail. No, that's a joke. But they did provide me clothes. They didn't fit right, but it doesn't matter. But and the shirt, but they didn't give my pants and my shirt back. But then I find out that they took my shirt and my pants, and they have this place inside there. It's called the Hall of Shame. They hang stuff up the prisoners bring in. Now they got to call it the Hall of Fame. You can't make these stories up.
Wow. But you had a certain sense of humor, a sense of outspokenness throughout this entire experience. Why is that?
Because people need to hear the truth, because otherwise the media and everything else that runs with other stories create the picture and people believe it. And, and how you brainwash people is repeat the same thing over and over again, whether it's true or not, and they'll believe it. Yeah. And that's the problem that we've had. And you've seen the censorship. You've seen in the news, you know, how they doctor the stories and make it sound a certain way to fit the narrative at the time. And then when it changes, then they have to back down and go, wait a minute, you know, we didn't report on this correctly. And I don't think it's necessary that people working for the ABC or NBC or any of these companies directly. I think a lot of them probably have a good heart, maybe try to do the best they can. Then you know how management works. There's a narrative, and then there's the censorship according to that narrative, because I don't know whether they're paid to do it or whether they're part of the DNC or part of
some other organization or George Soros funding it, there's money going in all directions. And it can happen on both sides of the fence. It's not like it's just a left or right issue. We just need to look at, is it right or wrong, or reporting the truth, and that's what we need to be looking at.
Yeah. Now, what do you hope to see happen going forward? I mean, you touched on not having access to your records. And yeah.
Well, that's something we need to bring up. That's why I'm having this talk, because I just found out about that yesterday. I had no knowledge, and it's just because a January 6er was killed. Now that brings attention to, wait a minute, what could be in our records that's not been scrubbed out of there? I mean, what created this situation? I'm not making any charge that it happened this way or that way, because we don't know the full story. But it is disconcerting knowing that there's a possibility that some of that stuff could still be there, and it could create a conflict that doesn't need to be.
Yeah. What, now coming out the other side from all of this, what's something you wish you knew at the beginning of, January 6th that you know now?
Well, I wish I didn't know anything, because if I had known it, I wouldn't have been there.
Yeah.
But if I know the outcome of the situation, that when we're all done with this, it's going to cost them a pile of money, then I'd be back on board again. You see what I'm saying? But who wants to really go through this experience? So if you're looking at it and you had a crystal ball, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that'd be a horrible thing to go through. But if you knew what the outcome's going to be, and you knew there was going to be huge rewards at the end of this, and we're going to fix our country, then absolutely. But I've always felt that way from the beginning, because I know God is bigger than me, and God can fix anything, and if we just spread the truth. I believe a little different than maybe most. I believe right now we're standing at the edge of the promised land, and we're heading to this golden age like Trump talks about. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego went through the same thing. Said, if you bow the knee to Baal, we won't throw you in the fiery furnace. And they said, well, God is able to rescue us, but even if he does not, we will still, not bow the knee to Baal. And then God shows up. And so even David, he's fighting Goliath. He had no fear. He took him on. And that's the way I felt, I didn't care. And I think sometimes we just need to not worry about the outcome of the situation, but stand on our principles. Now, Israel, if they would have stand on the principles, God did all those miracles for them. And they were standing at the edge of the promised land. If they would have possessed the land, they could have defeated the giants, because God would have fought for them. God did all these miracles, but they lived in fear. And on the side of my building, it says, those who fear have not been made perfect in love, and that comes out of the scriptures. And then our founding fathers had very similar principles. Those who give up liberty for security deserve neither. So if we want to keep our securities and want to keep our rights, we need to fight for them. And I have a guy here that pickets my building. He's a staunch Democrat, and he says Trump 15,000 lies, and he's out here picketing. I respect him more than I do a lot of these other left-leaning people, because he's standing up, he's voicing his opinion. Even if I disagree with it, doesn't matter. He has the right to do it, and I'll defend his rights to stand out there. Even if it's in front of my building, I don't care. And I told him, we actually invited him to go on the Trump train with us. But here's where I have a problem. I paint my building, do things I do, and then people want to come over, and you see there's some little graffiti on it that somebody painted. They want to basically take it out and create harm. Why can't we defend each other's rights? Agree or disagree, but still defend it. And like I say, I'll stand up for your rights, even if I don't believe in them, because that's a constitutional principle. And if I don't stand for you, who's going to stand for me? And that's where we need to be. We need to come together as Americans and not play this partisan politics, stand on what's right and what's wrong, whether or not we believe the agenda we're headed towards, but the principles by which we can govern our lives and basically govern our society by, so we have those freedoms.
Is there anything you would like to let Montanans know about you, about this experience?
Yeah, we just need to be outspoken. I think what's happened is, especially on the left, they've been more outspoken than the right has been. And I think because we want to get along with people, we're not willing to say certain things because it causes conflict. And, I believe we're in a time, like the Bible says, they're going to call evil good and good evil. And we had to have the wheat and the tares rise up together, because you couldn't pull the tares out of you uproot the wheat. So in the harvest time, there's a separation. So I believe the separation we're going through right now is we're exposing the heart of mankind. Who is standing for good, who's standing for evil. And when you start, standing up for your principles, you're going to create divisions. And that division's good, because the division's showing the heart of the person. So when the truth finally comes out, we're going to recognize who's right and who's wrong, and that's going to be settled.
All All right. Is there anything I forgot to ask? Anything you might want to add on this?
What questions you have for me?
I think we went through a lot. Parker, is there anything that you'd like to ask?
I feel like I had questions, but they ended up getting answered.
I know. Yeah. Yeah, I think you covered just about everything. I think we covered January 6th, and then legal battle, and now prison and the aftermath. So yeah, you were very thorough. So yeah.
There's a lot more little details to cover, but I think that's a good overview without
Yeah.
diving into the weeds. But like I say, what would be really fantastic is everyone sees the full video footage of what happened that day, unedited, everything, so people can make up their own mind and what I went through, and then how I was judged for doing nothing wrong because a narrative was spun by the news, and so therefore we were on the chopping block. We were the bad guys. Like we destroyed the Capitol, and that didn't occur. And there's another thing I think you find very fascinating. So I remember when Ashley Babbitt was shot. Remember, so one of the things we went to trial for, and I said, yeah, I used to work security. I said, we had security measures in the Capitol, and we know there's a command and control center. I asked them if there was a command and control center, and they said no. They denied it, that there was. And we know there is because you can go look at the video footage that day, and you can see people actually controlling the cameras, moving around, zooming in and out. So we know there's command and control for that reason. But we also know they have command and control over the locks of the doors. So their whole reason for convicting me is they said, well, when the fire alarm goes off, you should have entered because the fire alarm was going off, and we couldn't hear the fire alarm. And then the other thing is the doors can't be locked because the fire alarm, which isn't true. When the door swings shut, it locks. It can be opened from the inside, but here's the thing. Command and control has the ability to shut it down. So I have the video footage, and this is going to blow things open, where Ashley Babbitt was shot. The security and command and control locked the door into that area so people from the inside and the outside couldn't go in and out of it. So once again, they lied. They do have the ability to stop it, and they have other security measures in place, but they failed to do it. So this goes to the highest level of people in Congress. Someone told them not to secure the building and allowed that to be a trap for every January 6th. So that should be very disconcerting in and of itself.
Perfect.
I guess you got 4 years, right? There's 4 more years of trial. What does it look like after? What does 8 years from now look like, in your opinion?
I think once the truth comes out, our society is going to come together like never before. And when that happens, I think we're going to fix the world that we live in. I don't think we're going to have wars with other countries anymore. I believe the boogeyman. And so here as a nation, here's where we've been. Every war as a nation has been set up by the bankers and the politicians to enrich themselves. We have never fought a legitimate war as a country yet. And we set the bravest and the brightest to fight the wars, and they did it diligently. But there was uncalled for, and innocent people got hurt on both sides. This is the kind of stuff that needs to stop. Like Trump says, we need to stop the wars. It can't happen anymore. We can't create these boogeymen. We can't have trade imbalances that are so bad that it forces people into wars either, and create situations because, people are starving or wherever the case may be. But we just can't allow that to occur. Yeah. So we just need to have fairness. And if you have fairness, I believe the whole world comes together and our partisan differences go away and we can travel the world and enjoy it. And then people aren't wanting to come here for freedom because there's freedom everywhere. If America is once again put back in the Constitution and we're able to, not be involved in all these world conflicts and stuff, the rest of the world's going to heal as well. And then we'll be able to travel, we'll be able to enrich these other countries by taking these third world countries and bring them in the 21st century with technology and everything else. I look forward to those things, to working with other nations and stuff and to help them. And then that way America's a place to go, but also going to Mexico. There was a time when going to Mexico was great. There was a time when going to other parts of the world were a great spot. Now they're war zones and people don't want to go there. And it's unfortunate. We need to heal that and that way everyone starts to come together and work together as a world alliance.
Let's talk about these next 4 years. What are some things you hope to be addressed by Trump?
Well, I think he's addressing a lot of them. As we go along, as we see the problems, I think we need to bring it up and say, this is an issue, this is an issue. But basically, we need to secure the borders so we don't have the crime that's there. But in securing the borders, we need to help fix some countries, too. And so Mexico needs some help. You know, obviously, you know, we need to have an alliance with Russia and stuff. I mean, we shouldn't, Russia isn't our boogeyman. Russia has been defeating the deep state for a long time, or trying to. And the whole thing in Ukraine, that's a good example. The DNC in Brisbane, this goes all the way back to the president and their dealings there with COVID. It all originated from there and came across the United States, you know. I mean, it went from here, went to Montana, went over to China, and where it was released. So, and then the bioweapon they created, I mean, people don't talk about it, but it was a bioweapon. It was engineered, and we tried to warn people, but we're crazy to bring it up. Those kind of issues are front and center, and they need to be investigated, and the true story needs to be told about it.
Well, Hank, thank you so much for your time. Again, I think...
I guess, do you have any expectation that Trump's team reaches out to you or some of the followers?
You know, I believe Trump will reach out. I think he's got a lot to do in the next few months. So I think at some point that'll happen, but I think I think we're going to head through kind of an interesting stage here. Yeah. And when I say interesting, I mean there's going to be deportations of a lot of things, and I think we need to make it easy for people to come to the U.S., but they just need to come here legally. Mm-hmm. There's got to be a way to get here, to come into the United States. We know who's here. We can vet the people. But we need to get everyone that's here illegally out and then start the process to bring them back in the right way and to make it a clean slate. Because, I mean, what would it be like if you just decided to go to some other country and create problems, you know? They want to know who's there and why they're there. I think that's what's most positive thing come from it. And I mean, every other country expects that of us, so why should we just let people just come across for no reason without knowing who they are? Mm-hmm.
And I remembered another question that popped up in my head earlier, but did you create any bonds with other January 6ers? I mean, was this sort of like a bonding experience?
I wish I would have, but when I got there, all the January 6ers, I didn't meet one January 6er when I was in prison. They had just left. I guess the camp next door might have had a couple of them in them. Yeah. I was told there's a few people there, and everyone in the yard said there was a guy here, but I think he just shipped them out. No, I didn't run into a single January 6er when I was there.
Really?
I was there all by myself.
Yeah. And when you were there in prison, I mean, and you said that, you know, you sort of shared your story. I mean, what was sort of the general response?
It was very well accepted. People knew. They've been watching the TV. They've been seeing what's going on. They see the fraud going on. They see what's happening in California. They see the fires that are burning and know this whole thing was a setup. You know, I mean, it's like there's no water. I mean, Trump turns the water on. I mean, California is, I mean, they want to put roads through these areas where these houses burn. So, I mean, what a greater way to do that than to burn it all out. Now, I'm just saying, did they burn it intentionally? I can't say that. But it's awfully weird how everything burned and there was no way to control it, and none of the water systems worked at the time. Yeah. I mean, there was just a lot of failures in the system, the cutbacks in the fire department. So I can't blame one person, but I can claim that where it came from was from government itself. And anytime we see a very left-leaning or a liberal society that wants to push an agenda, it's one thing to have an idea of what you want to do. It's another thing to force your ideas on someone. You know, and I believe California has been through that. They're forcing their ideologies on them. If that means we got to burn down the city and shut off the water to get what policies we want done, that's what we're going to do. And so that's been the MO of California in the left-leaning thought is to we're going to do it at all cost.
Yeah. Another question is, what was the reception when you came back? I know you weren't gone that long, but how has your community reacted?
Well, you know, so it's funny because I really have not been here to interact with anyone. Everything I've interacted with has been on Facebook or Messenger of that sort. But I did some podcasts, you know, and everyone's been reaching out. So there are people that knew how to get a hold of me or through social media, but actually talk to people here. I mean, I haven't been here. I mean, theoretically, I mean, I came here the other day. It was like after 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock when I got here. And I spent an hour or two with my son at the shop here, and then you show up here at 11, and I was out on service calls. But other than that, I haven't interacted with anyone. So I mean, it's been a whirlwind. Most of my time was in California. And here's the funny part: when I was in California, and I always thought, you know, we kind of have a joke in Montana here. I says, you know, because it's not we don't like Californians, but you know, Californians always bring the problems to Montana. And I always say, you know, in California they used to grow fruits and nuts, but now they grow a different type. So referring to, you know, how people act in California. But here's what I found when I was in Pasadena. I was there the whole time. I did not find any left-leaning liberals, crazy people. They were all very conservative. They understand what's going on. They're very well educated. And I was shocked because I did not expect that in California at all. So, I mean, and I really believe that California voted red for Trump, and I believe once the whole election is exposed, you'll find out California isn't a blue state at all. So, and I believe they're realizing these policies are hurting them in many, many ways. And it needs to change. And I'm not saying Republicans have all the answers. I mean, and I'm not a party person. I don't care if Republican or Democrat. You vote for the person that represents your values. Don't vote for parties, you know? But I think in this last election, it's like Trump. I think he would have run on a third party, but there was no way to win without running on the Republican ticket. So it was necessary to do it. It just wasn't his control. So it was easier for him to do because I think, you know, if you look at Trump's past, he's always been kind of Democratic. He was very close to the Kennedys and all that.
Yeah.
He'd, look at, he's got Robert Kennedy. He's putting in, you know, for his, I didn't know position that he's been, you know, to make sure all our foods and stuff and our vaccinations are taken care of the proper way, so we're not poisoning people the way we are. You just get a lot of fallout for it, but you can see it doesn't matter what side of the party you're on. It's whether you stand on principles, you know. If something's hurting somebody or we're having issues with something, we need to remove it. I don't care if you're going against the biggest industry in the world, and that's the medical profession. If they're causing problems, they need to be brought down a notch or removed completely.